I'm Monica Murray with the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, and we are a Canadian charity that educates, mentors, energizes, and connects women entrepreneurs to be wildly successful, promoting strong economies and thriving communities. As part of our Pitch for the Purse program, this webinar focuses on the nonverbal fundamentals of your presentation. Several studies on body language show that from the audience's point of view, the single most impactful factor is the nonverbal communications of the presenter. And in fact, Amy Cuddy's TED Talk about the power pose is one of the most watched TED Talks with well over 17 million views. So we're very excited to be having a very special guest with us. And we have Rya Berkelaar from Richards Models joining us to discuss these fundamentals and why they're so important on the delivery of your pitch. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So let's get started. Now, today what we're going to be doing is we're talking about pitching, and we're talking about the importance of being in front of different people. And you can pitch in many different situations.
Yeah.
You can pitch in an informal way to your banker, in front of investors perhaps, maybe even on the sidelines of the soccer game. This happens. But today we're going to be talking specifically about an opportunity to pitch in front of an audience. So for our Pitch for the Purse program, in the semifinals, there's 2 live audience opportunities, one as a semifinalist and one as a finalist, should you be accepted as a finalist. And so there are some different things that need to be thought about on the stage, but there's also some things that we're going to take away today that can be used for anybody doing pitching. So let's start with the first question, and that is actually before you even get into the room.
Right.
So how would you recommend we prepare, or a presenter prepares before they walk into the room?
Okay, well, your mindset and the energy you give off has a huge impact on the people you're speaking to or your audience. So I would recommend getting into a positive mindset with a breathing technique, or taking an expansive posture, find a quiet place to sort of mentally prepare, breathe, get your body and mind in a nice calm Zen spot before you even start.
Yeah. That's so important, and that's what Amy Cuddy talks about in her TED Talk, is really about the power pose and just taking the time to breathe. We're going to talk about that too a little bit later.
Important.
It is.
Yeah.
So now we've gotten to the point where you're basically getting on the stage, and you've been handed a mic, for the presentation. What do you do next? What's kind of that first thing that you do once you get on stage?
Okay, well, don't take more than 2 seconds to scan the crowd, make eye contact, smile with various people. The crowd is going to engage with you more if they feel a connection and a friendly sort of personality. So the smile is really important. And it also can help with your, it produces endorphins and can lower your stress levels. So that's all important too.
It is important. And you know what? Whether you're in front of an audience or you're in front of a banker or even just one person, I mean, smiling is important. It's a likability factor.
Right.
And that's really important when you're actually trying to sell something to somebody.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to continue on this theme. So we're on stage, and in this particular question, we're going to really talk a little bit about the technicalities of being on a stage. So, what's the best way to stand during a presentation?
Okay. Well, I can't emphasize enough the importance of a good, strong posture. You want to imagine you have a string attached to the top of your head that's hanging you.
I'm going to sit a little taller.
That string will, bring you taller to the ceiling. And you want to have an open stance, neutral, and face your audience and feel confident out there.
Yeah. Now, what about people that like to cross their arms? Sometimes you'll see that happening.
Right. So you don't want to have any type of posture that will close you off from your audience, which is, folding your arms, crossing your legs or your ankles. It's all very closed off sort of body language that you don't want to do.
Absolutely. Now, you're on stage. We've talked a little bit about being open. What about standing still or walking around? We talked about the Amy Cuddy TED Talk. All of the TED Talks, they have the little red carpet. Some people maybe have a podium. Other times, there's kind of a big, wide stage.
Right.
What's maybe a better impact perhaps on an audience, or something that you would recommend?
Well, I think, moving a little bit is good to keep the audience interested and engaged. And it doesn't have to be pacing, taking up the whole stage. It could be as simple as a step forward to emphasize a point, or a step back to conclude a point or change a subject. Just, it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, it can be very distracting. As a simple example, I actually was watching a gentleman do a presentation, and he had this habit of shifting from one foot to the other.
Okay.
And eventually I was just focusing on the shifting rather than the content.
Right.
So that's a good example.
And uneasy, sort of.
That's actually a good point.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're holding a mic, right? So somebody's giving you a mic and perhaps a clicker. Certainly if you're doing a pitch, a formal pitch like this, you likely have a presentation. So now you have a clicker in one hand, you have a mic in the other. Right. Let's talk about hand movements. Right. Again, a lot of what we're saying today might seem a little bit basic, but honestly, when endorphins are going and you've got that nervous energy happening, sometimes we kind of forget even the basics. So this is why we're talking about it, right? So tell me first about the microphone. What's the best way to hold a microphone, and some things that you should or shouldn't do?
Okay. Well, it would be good to hold your microphone at a 45-degree angle. You don't want it to be any closer than 2 fingers away from your mouth, no further than the hand away, depending on how loudly you speak. And to keep in mind that the microphone adds decibels. It doesn't improve voice quality or personality.
Sure, exactly. And women have to really be careful too with their, we'll talk a little bit more later, but about their pitch and their tone. And so really to kind of keep it constant. We talked a little bit too about hand talking.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a bit of a hand talker, as you can see. So when you have a microphone, I guess it's important to be mindful that you're keeping at least the microphone quite consistently close to your mouth.
Exactly. So you want your movements to be at the wrist, not sort of all around your space or in front of your face.
Right. That's a good point too. So you've got a clicker in the other hand. Is there something important that you should keep in mind, just, when you've got a clicker, and how to use all of these multiple devices?
Right. So you could use your clicker hand in the same way as your feet, in that to gesture important points you want to make. You have it go with the rhythm of what you're speaking about, and I think that will help you be more impactful. And if you practice that while you're practicing your speech, then you won't be at risk of fidgeting or not knowing what to do with that hand.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes, obviously when you're on a stage and doing a pitch like this with a microphone, we're talking about microphones, but sometimes you don't have a mic, and you might just be at a pitch competition or just a regular pitch, and you've got things like a clicker. Tell me about what do you do when the clicker stops working or the microphone stops working? What do you do?
Well, the best advice I can give is to be calm and carry on. If you're in a really large space, I guess you're going to want to wait for your microphone to be replaced, but do your best to carry on if it's suitable for the arena. If it's just a panel,
great advice.
Too much. If the clicker is not working, hopefully you know your pitch well enough that you can just continue through.
Absolutely, great advice. Thank you. So, we talked about, I mentioned nervous energy,
right?
And how sometimes we can forget, some of the basics. Talk to me a little bit about fidgeting when you're nervous.
Okay, well, you definitely want to avoid fidgeting, because it can be very distracting from your message, and they'll stop listening to what you're saying and wondering why you're fidgeting so much.
And it's easy to do. We talked a little bit about the gentleman that shifted from one foot to the other.
It creates a real you begin to question the confidence of the speaker and their confidence in the message.
Right. No, those are really good points. And we are going to talk about practicing later. And that's a good way to do it, is to really understand how fidgeting shows up in you. I'm a jewelry fidgeter. I have to.
We all have our vices.
We do. So we've talked a little about hands and feet and that sort of thing. But tell me a little bit now about your body and your body positioning, again, whether you're in front of an audience or even, again, sitting in a smaller room. What's what do you want to be mindful of when you're doing your pitch?
You absolutely do not want to turn your back to your audience or your panel. You want to stay front and focused. The crowd needs to see your eyes and your mouth to stay engaged. So, don't turn your back on them. If you have a slide behind you that you want to reference, it's good to go to a 45-degree angle, You can gesture toward the slide, but that is there as a visual for the audience,
Right.
not your cue card.
Right,
So
right. You should know your slides.
stuff,
Yeah.
and so you shouldn't have any reason to turn your back and read the slide.
Exactly, exactly. Good point. Very good point. Okay, now, so tell me a little bit about voice. So women, as I mentioned, have a bit of a higher pitch, but we also have a habit, women more so than men, of the inflection of this uplift.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about this and what that could mean when somebody's speaking in that way.
Right. So an inflection of that rises at the end of a sentence usually indicates a question or that there's more to come, that the sentence isn't quite finished. But it is a bad habit these days. You hear this upward inflection.
I'm pretty sure I've been doing that already, but
a lot of people are guilty, yes. But in a presentation, it either leads to a lack of, a confusion.
Yeah, sure.
As I'm speaking,
Sure.
a confusion was that a question, or is there more to that point? And then the point gets missed because you're wondering about that. You're not making the statement, so you want your statement, to punctuate your sentences.
No, that's a great point. And sometimes people may even feel that if you're ending your sentences with an uplift, that perhaps you're unsure of what you're saying as well.
Yes,
that's a great
question for sure.
Now, let's talk a little bit about what you wear. So, women have this luxury of having a lot of different choices and options available to us with respect to, our appearance. So, and it's easy as well to be distracted by that, or an audience can be distracted, or whoever you're talking to can be distracted by that. So again, what are some key tips and things for people to keep in mind when they're thinking about, okay, this is what I'm going to say, but this is how I'm going to say it, and this is how I'm going to visually present myself.
Right. Yeah. Well, you always want to consider your audience. It's a professional forum. You want to keep things simple. You want to express yourself, but not going over the top. So I recommend solid colors, simple patterns, neutral colors, and you can have a few well-placed accessories, but nothing that's overpowering or just overpowering to the look, unless it's on brand with what you're pitching. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I remember back in the 90s, the clip-on earrings. I once was in an interview and I went flying across the room, so definitely didn't wear those to an interview after that. So tell me now about skirts. Pants versus skirts. What's what's the recommendation there?
Okay, well, if you are going to wear a skirt, I would recommend below the knee length for sure. You want to consider things like, are you going to be sitting? Imagine if you're going to be sitting on a bar stool, is the outfit you've chosen. Are you going to be comfortable getting on and off in front of a crowd of a bar stool? Or a low couch or a low chair, So I think more times than not, you want to consider wearing pants, unless you have a long enough skirt that could accommodate all of those things. You probably find yourself in a safer zone with that.
That's a good point. Absolutely. Now, it does go without saying that, you've got the outfit that people are seeing, but then tell us a little bit about, what's underneath and some things that we need to
things you might want to avoid are brightly colored undergarments that may show through your clothing, or if you have a wardrobe malfunction, you wouldn't want. That would make it very obvious. That said, you want to check your buttons and zippers before going on stage, really important. And of course, to avoid midriff showing tops or tops with cutouts. It can be very distracting and of course, not appropriate for a business environment.
No, that's a great point. And shoes. What about our shoes? We have a lot of them to choose from. Any, tips there?
Well, we do have a lot of choices, and you want to seriously consider comfort level, I think, with, your heel height and the fit of your shoe. You don't want to be distracted by an uncomfortable shoe that you'll have to be standing in for who knows how long.
Exactly.
So really consider how comfortable your shoes are.
And, again, this is a very specific point to being on a stage, and people don't often have this opportunity. So I think it's worth mentioning.
Mhm.
And that is, when you're going on stage, and it could be, for many different reasons. So you're graduating or, receiving some sort of an award. It could be for many other reasons that you could be there. But quite often, just to keep in mind, going on and off a stage, quite often there are stairs to the side.
Yeah.
And in many cases, there's no railing. So,
Right.
if you are wearing a very high heel, you have to be incredibly confident and comfortable, because often they actually shimmy, right? These, they're temporary staircases. So just be mindful of that. All of these things. So bottom line, tell us, what's important from that visual perspective.
Well, it's important to let your personality show through and to be very comfortable in what you're wearing and how you're looking. You want to feel comfortable, confident, and focused.
Yeah. And you mentioned too that, it's not just visually as well what you're wearing, but also the just how you feel and being rested.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So look your best.
Yeah.
Feel rested and healthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it does shine through, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay. Now, practice. We mentioned it earlier. Tell us some of the points that are important for practice and why it's important to practice.
Well, of course, it's important to practice to have that polish. You want to practice in front of a mirror, in front of friends, to get the muscle memory of maybe your movements as well as what you're saying. And do the dress rehearsal in your outfit.
Right. Good point.
Maybe time
Time
the length of your speech.
Exactly.
That you fit it all in.
Yeah, exactly. Often with pitches, regardless of whether it's a formal pitch or even an informal pitch, it's really good to keep in mind how long you're talking, because you can get yourself down a garden path quite quickly.
Right.
And it's hard to kind of wind back. So being able to time yourself gives you a sense of how much you're saying.
Right.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Rya. This has been great. We really appreciate your expertise in this area. Certainly what you do for a living is, all of these things. I know you live this, so that's great. And thank you everybody for watching this webinar. Our goal for this educational component for FWE's Pitch for the Purse program is tangible takeaways that you can use today in helping you pitch your business. You can find other webinars on pitching for investment on our website at fwe.ca.